Welcome to this video by Resident Tech Work. This is part 2 of a 3-part series looking at creating a pause menu system for Unreal Engine. The menu will include return to game, load game, save game and quit options. The first part showed how to pause the game, return to it or quit to the desktop. This second part will show how to add save and load game options to this menu. To begin, we already have our modular button and the pause menu widget from the first video. If you open the pause menu and then select the second vertical box, the one that contains the buttons, and change the Y value to 400. Then we'll go back across to the buttons, and on the resume button we hit Ctrl D twice to create 2 new buttons, and then select the first of those new buttons and we'll call this one load. Create load in the text and also change the name to load button. And the second one save, and likewise the name on the button save button. So compile and save. And now we have the buttons. But how do they work? Well, the best way to save and load data into a game is through a game instance. This is a special type of blueprint class that loads first when you start a game and then persists across levels, so it's perfect for saving and loading data around your game. If you do not have a game instance in your game, right click in the blueprints folder, select blueprint class and search for game instance. Give it a name like BP_game instance. However, AGLS comes with a game instance already in use, but that's written in C++. So first we'll find that. There it is. Then we'll right click on that and select create blueprint class based on game instance. I want to save that to the blueprints folder with the name BP_game instance. And with that created, go to the edit menu at the top of the editor and click on project settings. Now when this window opens, click on maps and modes in the left hand side, and at the bottom of that page you'll see the game instance class. You click the downward arrow and select the BP game instance we just created, and this tells the game that you want to use it in your new game instance when it starts up. So now to create the actual save game function. If you go back to the pause menu folder, right click, select new folder and name that save game. If you go into the new folder, right click and select blueprint class and search for save game and name this BP_save game. Now when you open up, you'll see that it looks just like a normal blueprint, but this blueprint type is only meant to hold variables that you want to store for your game. It does not carry out any actions. The variables you want to store for your game are dependent on what you're building into your game. For the purpose of this tutorial, I'm only going to save the player location and their health. How detailed you want your save game to be is up to you. You could include enemy positions, their weapon, ammo, damage status, vehicle details, clothes details, anything you want. You just have to be able to store the variables within this blueprint. Now, as you're probably realising, there could be a lot of variables to save here. So a more organised way of doing this is to use structures. This allows you to have separate structures for your player, your enemies, vehicle types, locations, basically anything you want to save. So compile and save this blueprint without adding anything. And then right click on the browser and type in structure in the search field. Name it STPlayer and open it. Now the first thing we need is the player's position, which is a vector. So name the first variable player location and give it a type vector. Then we need the player rotation, which is a type of rotator. And then for the third one, we need player health, which is a float. We now have the basic variables for our actor. You could include weapon details, clothes, whether or not he has a backpack, any additional weapons. You can imagine how easy this would be to lose track of things if you didn't use structures to divide up the information that you might want. So save and close, and open up BP, save game again. Now under variables, I'm going to add a new variable called player save, and the type is stPlayer, which is what we've just created. This will give us access to all of the variables you could include in the player structure through one variable set in the save game. So compile and save that, and close the window. Now that we have the save game set up, we have to tell the game instance what to do with it. So open the game instance that you created, right click in the graph and search for event init. This is an event that kicks off when you start your game, so it's the first thing to happen. In the variables list on the left, click the plus sign and create a variable of save game with the type BP save game. And this is a reference to the save game. Then create a variable of slot name, type is string. And on the right in the details panel, beside the type, click the down arrow and select array. This is so we can select the specific slot. If you click compile now, come back to the details panel, and at the bottom you'll find the plus sign there. That will actually let you set up the array. So if you set up 4 slots and call them slot 1, slot 2, slot 3 and slot 4. And back in the graph, if we bring the slot name variable below the init event, pull a string out and search for each loop. And connect this to the init event. From the loop body, find does game exist. And connect the array element of the loop body to the slot name pin. And from the output of that, pull out a string and make a branch. And from the false pin, search for create save game object. In the class drop down, find the BP save game object that we created earlier. From the variables, if we pull across the save game, and we can set that using the return value. Now compile. I've just noticed I forgot to connect the branch, so if I put the condition of the branch against the return value of the does game exists, compile and save that. While we're here, we're going to create the actual save function. So if you search for custom event and call it save slot and give it an input of slot name, which will be a string. And in the event node, the save slot event node which you created, if you take the slot name and promote that to a variable, and we'll call that SV slot name. Now pull a string out of that and cast to your player character. In AGLS, this would be the ALS Anim Man. And from the object, if you pull out a string and find Get Player Pawn, and this will allow us to gather the information from the player. From the As Character pin, pull out a string, search for Get Current Health, and then in an area next to the cast, search for Get Player Pawn, and link that to Get Actor Location and Get Actor Rotation. Now if we right click and search for Make ST Player, and this will enable us to actually use the structure that we created earlier on. This brings up the pins required. From that, and then connect the pins to suit there. Health, rotation and location. From the output of the cast to character, drag a string and search for Set Player Save. And this will enable us to use the ST player to actually create our save point. And connect the ST player result into the player save. And for the target, if you search for Get Save Game, and then from the player save, if you pull out a string and delete game in slot, and then while we're here, also from the outside of that, if you put save game to slot, and for the slot names in both of them, if you pull the SV slot name across from the variables and connect that to the two slot name pins, and then also if you drag the save game variable and put it on the save game object, and that completes the ability to save. Now if we go into variables, we just want to add a quick variable here of widget save action, and we'll change that to a boolean. This is for some functions later on, we'll come to that in a while. Compile and save and go into the pause menu. Go to the pause menu folder, select the pause menu in there and right click and duplicate, and we're going to call this one W_slot menu. Now if we go back and open the pause menu in the designer screen, in the left menu click on the save button, and if we go down to the bottom and click the on button press, from the action box that appears, pull out a string, search for cast to game instance, BP game instance, and for the object pin, search for Get Game Instance. From the As Game Instance, search for Set Widget Save Action, which the variable we created. And oh, wait a minute, that's actually set wrong. If we go back to the game instance, that boolean is actually set as an array, it should be single. So if we go back, and we'll delete that and bring that back in again, just so it's correct. There we go, that's it this time. Then connect that up and make sure you tick that box. And then from the set widget note, search for create widget, and then drop down, find the W slot menu that we just created. There's this slot menu. Then pull out a string and get add to viewport mode, sorry. Click the down arrow, get the Z order, And if you watch the first part of the tutorial, you remember defines the height of the widget relative to the canvas panel. Set that to 10. Then add a remove from parent, and that will open our slots menu so we can select a slot to save the file into. Compile and save. And now to edit the slot menu. Connect the return value to the target. Compile and save. And then if we go back to the slot menu we've just created and open that, select the second vertical box in the left menu, and in the details on the right change the size X to 600. Then select each button and change the text to empty, and the button names to button underscore slot 1, slot 2, slot 3, slot 4. These will be the 4 slots that you have available for saving or loading. Once you've finished that, select the 4th button and press Ctrl D. So you make a new button, and with this button change the text to return to menu, and we'll call the button return button. This is so you can get back out once you've saved a game. So if you could click compile and save, and then go back to the first button, and at the bottom if you hit the on button press, once we're in here we actually want to take all the other nodes out of there. So if you just come back out and you want to delete everything that's in that table, because we're going to be changing all of these. Now if we come back to the designer, and what we want to do is actually go down to the bottom of the details panel on every button and click that on button press, so that once you've finished you'll have action buttons for each of the slots. So if I just tidy this up a little bit so you can see what's going on better. And then the variables, if you create a new variable called slot name, and that will have a variable type of string, and then if you pull that into the graph, now we need 4 of these, so if you duplicate your Control D 3 times to give the 4, and then line them up with each of the event buttons we've just created, and you just put in the name slot 1, slot 2, slot 3, and obviously slot 4. And if you go back up to the top one, I just pull out a string and cast to BP game instance, and then connect each of the set points into that cast. And for the object, if you search for get game instance, and from the as game instance, promote that to variable and give it the name of game instance. This just gives us a reference to that. And if you draw out a string to a branch, and from the true pin, find save slot. I have to tick out that context box. Save game, that's the function that we created earlier on in the game instance. Now for the target, if we come along and bring the game instance in from our variables, and for the slot name, if we bring in this SV slot name, and that allows us to create a save slot for the game. So we can now save a file. Now we also need an event for that return to menu button as well, so go back and press the on button press in the designer, come back in here, pull out a string and search for create widget. And for the class, if we select the pause menu, there we go, and then from the return value we want to add to viewport, and remember the downward arrow, and on the Z value change that to 10 again. And then pull a string out for that, and remove from parent. Okay, so now the ability to pause the game, just compile and save that. We have the ability to pause the game and save a slot, but how do we load it back in? So we have to go back to the game instance, and right click in an open area and search for custom event, or add custom event, and we'll call this load slot. And in the detail panel on the right, we want to add an input, and we'll call that slot name with a type of string. And then back on the load slot pin, we want to pull out a string and does save game exist, and connect the slot name from the load into the does save game exist. And from there, pull out a pin, and we want to do a branch, and from the true pin draw out and search for load game from slot. This is also looking for a slot name, so if you take a string from the load slot node straight across there, and just use some pins just to make that a bit tidier. And draw out the return value from the load game from slot. I want to cast that to BP saved game. Now from the as BP, we'd want to promote that to a variable. We've already got this variable from previous, so if you just bring that through and go set, and then connect that in. And then draw out another string from the variable pin and search for get player save. And then from this, we want to get break st player, which is the structure that we created earlier on. This gives us access to the pins from that structure. And then from the set game save output, we want to search for actor location and actor rotation. From the actor rotation, we also want to cast to the character, which is the anim man in AGLS. From the as character pin, search for set current health, and then go back to the st player node and connect the pins into the appropriate places. Location to location, rotation to rotation, and the health to health. But ticking that teleport for actual location. This allows you, the actor, to go straight to the point that you're referring to without any testing for collision. The set actor nodes require targets, so search for get player pawn, and if you connect that to both the set actor location and set actor rotation. And also to the cast. And if you come back to the, just set that up, There we go. And if you come back to the branch, back here, and on the false pin, bring out and search for print string. Search for print string. There we go. And in the message box, enter something along the lines of "Sorry, game save does not exist." This is so that the player has some form of response when they tick a load box that doesn't actually have a save in it. And then compile and save. Now, to get this to be usable, go back to the slot menu, and from the branch that we made earlier, up here, from the false pin, search for load slot. So that function we just created, and as before, the game instance is the target, and SV slot name is the slot name. And then from the load slot, if you draw out a string and set game paused, and then out to show mouse cursor, then set input mode game only, and finally out to remove from parent. Now underneath the load slot, search for get player pawn, and draw a string out from that and search for get player controller. And then rearrange these slightly to tidy them up a bit. And use the return value from the player controller to give the target for the show mouse cursor and for the input mode. Or the input mode game only for the player controller there. And I compile and save. Now I think I've just noticed something. If we come back across to the cast, yes, pull a string out and search for widget save action and connect that to the condition of the branch. This is so that when we come in, it knows whether it's a save or a load that's required here. And compile and save. Now we need to return to the pause menu and create a load function. So in the designer, click on the load button, come down and click on the on button press button at the bottom. And all we have to do here is copy and paste the save nodes and bring them over next to the load node that we've just added in. And if you link those up and take the tick out of the widget save action box, and connect the game instance to the object of the cast, and compile and save. And now if I press play and move the player to a different location, hit save and select a slot, if I quit out and restart, and when I pause the game and select the game load, you can see he has moved back to that location. In the next video I'll show you how to add names to those slots. If you have found this video useful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel.